Under a sky the color of wet asphalt, Daniel Hart, a scrappy 30-year-old freelance journalist from Philly, gunned his rented Chevy down a rutted dirt road slicing through New Jersey's Pine Barrens. The forest loomed like a living thing, pines clawing at the gray heavens, their branches creaking like they were spilling secrets nobody was meant to hear. Daniel wasn't some wide-eyed believer in ghost stories. His side gig as a horror novelist paid the bills, but he dealt in fiction, not fairy tales. Still, this gig, a deep-dive article on the Jersey Devil for a true crime magazine, had him hooked. Something about the legend felt heavier than just campfire spook talk, like it was clawing at the edges of truth. It was early fall, but the air bit like winter. Daniel pulled up to a beat-up wooden cabin he'd rented from a grizzled local farmer who'd eyed him like he was signing his own death warrant. The place squatted at the forest's edge, its frosted windows glinting like wary eyes. Inside, it stank of damp rot and moss, the kind of smell that clung to your clothes. He fired up an old oil lamp in the corner. Electricity here was a crapshoot, and its sickly yellow glow threw shadows that danced like specters across the warped walls. Daniel cracked open his laptop, fingers itching to get his thoughts down. He'd spent weeks digging into the Jersey Devil, a winged freak show with a goat's head, a horse's body, and claws that could shred steel. Most of the stories he'd heard from locals sounded like something you'd tell kids to keep them out of the woods. But the deeper he dug, the weirder it got, sightings stretching back to the 1700s, always in the Pine Barrens, always with that same chilling detail. Screams in the night, raw and wrong like nothing God put on this earth. He tracked down Esther Brooks, a local historian with eyes sharp as broken glass, in a diner that smelled of burnt coffee and fryer grease. "You don't go poking at things that don't want to be found," she'd warned, sliding an old map across the table, marked up with red ink like bloodstains. It showed spots where the devil had supposedly shown its face, including a swamp called Blood Marsh, named for some 1800s slaughter nobody could quite explain. Daniel had smirked at her theatrics, but that map was now spread out on the cabin's rickety table, pulling his eyes like a bad habit. Night fell hard, the wind screaming through the trees like a banshee with a grudge. Daniel checked his gear. A Nikon DSLR, a voice recorder, a beat-up leather notebook crammed with questions. He tossed in a heavy flashlight and a folding knife, though he wasn't sure what good a blade would do against a myth. Just for the story, he told himself, but his gut was starting to whisper otherwise. Around midnight, something yanked him out of a restless sleep. A sound, soft, wet footsteps sloshing in the mud outside, followed by a hiss that crawled up his spine like a razor. He bolted upright, snatching the flashlight and swinging its beam toward the window. Nothing but shadows and swaying pines. Then it came again, closer, like whatever was out there was circling the cabin, taking its time. "Probably just a deer," he muttered, but his pulse wasn't buying it. The hiss wasn't right, it was too deliberate, too knowing. He double-checked the door's lock, then crawled back to bed, though sleep was a lost cause. Come morning, Daniel's head felt like it was stuffed with cotton. He stepped outside to clear his mind and froze. In the mud by the back door were tracks, big, deep, with claw marks that looked like they'd been gouged by something with a serious attitude. Bear maybe, he said, but he'd seen bear tracks before and these weren't even close. He snapped photos, his hands steadier than his nerves. Before heading out, he called up Amos Reed, an old hunter who'd agreed to meet at a greasy spoon on the edge of the Barrens. Amos looked like he'd been carved from the same wood as the forest, his voice rough as gravel. Over black coffee, he spilled his story. 20 years back, he'd seen something, a winged shadow gliding over the treetops, eyes glowing like brake lights in the dark. "Ain't no animal, ain't no man," Amos said, his hands shaking just enough to notice. "You go looking for it, it'll look for you." He slid a small stone amulet across the table, carved with weird symbols, said it kept bad things away. Daniel pocketed it with a half-smile, humoring the guy. That afternoon, he trekked toward Blood Marsh, backpack loaded with gear and Esther's map. The deeper he went, the meaner the forest got, pines so thick they choked out the sun, air heavy with damp earth and something sour. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves had him spinning, half expecting red eyes in the gloom. When he hit the marsh, the stench hit him like a punch, mud and decay with a coppery tang that made his stomach lurch. He started recording, voice steady despite the creep factor. Day 1 Blood Marsh. Something about this place feels off. His recorder fritzed, spitting static and faint whispers that didn't sound like any language he knew. He shut it off, hard hammering. At the water's edge, he found more tracks, bigger than the ones at the cabin, and scattered around them were black feathers, long, slick, like they'd been dipped in oil. He bagged one, trying to stay cool, but the trees around him were scarred with claw marks, some fresh enough to ooze sap. As the sun dipped, painting the sky bruise purple, Daniel booked it back to the cabin. The woods seemed to close in, shadows twisting into shapes that weren't there a second ago. That hiss was back, joined by a faint flapping, like a tarp caught in a storm. He didn't look back. Inside the cabin, he locked every door and cranked the lights, though they flickered like they were on life support. He uploaded his photos, zooming in on the feathers and tracks. They didn't look like anything from a zoo or a nature doc. More like something that crawled out of a nightmare. That night, the hissing came again right outside his window. He froze, blanket pulled tight, telling himself it was just the wind. But he knew better. Whatever was out there wasn't just a story. It was real and it was watching. At dawn, he found something that turned his blood to ice. Long, jagged scratches marred his bedroom window, like something had tried to claw its way in. And on the floor, beneath it, Amos's amulet lay shattered, split clean in two like it had been smashed with intent. The fog clung to the pine barrens like a shroud, swallowing the morning light and turning the pines into spectral shapes. Daniel Hart sat at the cabin's wobbly table, staring at the broken amulet, its cracked stone face mocking him. The scratches on the window, deep, deliberate gouges, stared back like a warning. He chugged his coffee, now cold, trying to drown the dread pooling in his gut. "Get a grip, Hart," he muttered, but the photos on his laptop, the claw marks, the oily feathers, those damn tracks, weren't letting him off easy. Whatever was out there wasn't just a story. It was real and it was pissed. He geared up to head back to Blood Marsh. His Nikon voice recorder and notebook were joined by a second flashlight, extra batteries, and a first aid kit he hoped he wouldn't need. The broken amulet stayed on the table. He wasn't sure why, but touching it felt like inviting trouble. Esther's map, creased and coffee-stained, went into his backpack. He checked his folding knife, its blade glinting dully, and slipped it into his pocket. Proof, he told himself. Get the proof, write the story, get out. The trek to Blood Marsh felt heavier today. The forest was too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of his boots on pine needles. The air was thick, reeking of wet earth and that same coppery rot that had hit him yesterday. His eyes darted to every shadow, every snapped branch. The claw-scarred trees were more frequent now, their wounds fresh, like the forest was bleeding. He snapped photos, his hands steady but his pulse racing like a jackhammer. Halfway to the marsh, he found something new. A pile of bones, picked clean, stacked in a deliberate circle. Deer, maybe, or something bigger. The skulls were crushed, as if something had taken its time breaking them open. Daniel's stomach churned, but he forced himself to photograph the scene, whispering into his recorder, "Found, remains. Not sure what kind. Too neat to be random." The static flared again, louder, drowning his voice with garbled whispers that sounded almost human. When he reached Blood Marsh, the water looked darker, like it was soaking up the gray sky. The stench was worse, rotting meat mixed with something chemical like burnt oil. He scanned the ground for more tracks and found them, deeper and fresher, leading into the water. Beside them, more of those black feathers, some clumped with a sticky tar-like substance. He bagged another sample, his fingers trembling. "What the hell are you?" he muttered, half expecting an answer. Then he saw it, a shape across the marsh, half hidden in the reeds. Tall, hunched, its outline wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. It was gone in a blink, but the air turned colder, heavier, like the forest was holding its breath. Daniel's flashlight flickered, despite the fresh batteries. He backed up, heart slamming against his ribs, and tripped over a root, dropping his recorder. It hit the mud and screamed static, a distorted wail that sounded like "leave." He grabbed it and ran, legs burning as he tore through the pines. The hiss was back, louder, chasing him. Branches snapped behind him, too close, too heavy for a fox or deer. The flapping came next, a leathery thud that echoed in his skull. He didn't look back, couldn't. The cabin was his only shot. He burst through the door, slamming it shut and throwing the bolt. His chest heaved as he flicked on every light, the bulbs buzzing like angry wasps. The hissing stopped, but the silence was worse, like the thing was waiting, biding its time. He dumped his gear on the table, hands shaking as he uploaded the new photos. The bones, the feathers, the tracks, they were all there, but the last shot, taken when he tripped, showed something else. A blur in the reeds with two glowing red spots like embers in the dark. Sleep was a pipe dream. Daniel sat up, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, eyes glued to the windows. Around 2 a.m., the hissing returned, slow and deliberate, circling the cabin. Then came a new sound, a low, guttural chuckle like something was amused. He gripped the knife tighter, sweat beading on his forehead. The oil lamp flickered, casting shadows that stretched into claws on the walls. At dawn, he checked outside, half expecting more tracks. Instead, he found something worse. The cabin's front door was covered in scratches, not random but arranged, like symbols or words in a language he couldn't read. And in the mud, a single black feather, longer than the others, was stabbed upright, like a flag claiming territory. Daniel's phone buzzed, startling him. It was a text from an unknown number. "You were warned. No signal out here, no way anyone could have sent it." He stared at the screen, then at the feather, his journalist's skepticism crumbling like dry leaves. Whatever was in the Pine Barrens wasn't just watching him anymore. It was playing with him. The Pine Barrens woke under a sky bruised purple, the fog thicker now, curling through the pines like smoke from a dying fire. Daniel Hart hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, his coffee mug empty for the third time. The cabin felt like a trap, its walls closing in with every creak. The scratched-up door, the black feather stabbed into the mud, and that cryptic text, "You were warned," burned in his mind. His phone still showed no bars, yet the message sat there taunting him. He tried to call the number back, but it was dead, like it had never existed. Daniel's hands shook as he packed his gear. His Nikon, recorder, and notebook were essentials, but he added a crowbar from the cabin's rusty toolbox, its weight reassuring in his grip. The broken amulet still lay on the table, its symbols seeming to shift when he wasn't looking. He stuffed Esther's map into his jacket, the red-inked spots, especially Blood Marsh, feeling like coordinates to his own grave. "One more trip," he told himself, voice hoarse. "Get the shot, get the story, get the hell out." The forest was a different beast today. The silence was suffocating, the air heavy with that rancid, oily stench. Every step toward Blood Marsh felt like wading through molasses, his boots sinking into the damp earth. The claw-scarred trees were everywhere now, their gashes deeper, some dripping a dark, sap-like goo. He photographed them, his camera's shutter sounding too loud, like it was begging to be noticed. His recorder stayed off. The static whispers from yesterday still echoed in his head, too close to voices. Halfway to the marsh, he stumbled on another bone pile, bigger than the last, arranged in a spiral. Skulls, some animal, some too human-looking, stared up at him, their eye sockets empty but accusing. A chill ran down his spine and he muttered, "This ain't right," snapping photos with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. The forest seemed to watch, its stillness a predator's patience. When he reached Blood Marsh, the water was black as tar, reflecting nothing, not even the bruised sky. The smell was unbearable, rot, blood, and that chemical burn that made his eyes water. The tracks from yesterday were gone, washed away, but new ones circled the marsh's edge, larger, with claw marks that looked fresh, like they'd been carved minutes ago. More black feathers littered the ground, some stuck in the mud like arrows. He bagged another, its slick texture making his skin crawl. Then he heard it, a low, guttural hum like a machine dying in the distance. It wasn't the hiss or the chuckle from before. This was deeper, vibrating in his chest. He froze, scanning the reeds. Nothing moved, but the hum grew, joined by a faint scratching like claws on stone. His flashlight flickered again, its beam cutting out for seconds at a time. "Come on," he hissed, smacking it against his palm. When the light steadied, it caught something. A glint of red in the fog, two glowing points like cigarette cherries, watching him from across the marsh. Daniel's breath caught. He raised his camera, heart pounding, and snapped a burst of shots. The hum stopped, replaced by that leathery flapping, closer now, coming from above. He ducked, instinct screaming, and caught a glimpse of something massive, winged, angular, wrong, gliding over the treetops. It was gone before he could focus, but the air turned frigid, his breath clouding in front of him. He bolted, not caring about proof anymore. The forest fought him, branches snagging his jacket, roots tripping his feet. The flapping followed, joined by that hiss, now a snarl that seemed to come from everywhere. He clutched the crowbar, swinging it at shadows that weren't there. The cabin was too far and he knew it. Blood Marsh wasn't letting him go. He stumbled into a clearing, chest heaving, and realized he was lost. Esther's map was useless, none of the landmarks matched. The fog was thicker here, the trees twisted into shapes that didn't make sense, like they'd grown to trap him. The snarl came again, closer, and he spun, crowbar raised. "Show yourself," he shouted, voice cracking. The fog parted, and there it was, taller than a man, its body a grotesque mash of horse and reptile, wings folded like tattered sails. Its head was wrong, goat-like but stretched, with eyes that burned red and a maw of jagged teeth. It didn't move, just stared, its presence pressing against him like a physical weight. Daniel's camera slipped from his hands, hitting the ground with a dull thud. He swung the crowbar, but the thing didn't flinch. It laughed, that same guttural chuckle now loud enough to rattle his bones. He ran blind, the forest a blur. The flapping was right behind him, the snarl in his ears. Something grazed his shoulder, claws sharp and cold, tearing his jacket and drawing blood. He screamed, stumbling, and fell into the mud. The thing loomed over him, its shadow swallowing the fog, its eyes boring into his soul. "Leave," it rasped, not in his ears but in his head, the word searing like a brand. Daniel scrambled to his feet, crowbar gone, and ran until his lungs burned. The cabin appeared through the fog like a miracle, and he threw himself inside, slamming the door. He piled furniture against it, table, chairs, anything, his shoulder bleeding through his shirt. The flapping stopped, but the snarl lingered, circling outside. His phone buzzed again. "You saw." He didn't sleep. Dawn came, weak and gray, but the forest was silent. His camera was gone, left in the clearing, but his laptop still had the photos from the marsh. The last ones showed those red eyes, clear as day, staring through the fog. The door was scratched again, the symbols sharper, like a message he was too scared to read. In the mud outside, a new feather, longer, smeared with something red, too red to be sap. Daniel packed his bag, hands shaking so bad he could barely zip it. He was done. Proof or no proof, he wasn't staying another night. But as he stepped outside, the fog seemed to tighten, the pines leaning in. The Jersey Devil wasn't just a story anymore. It was his hunter, and it wasn't done playing. The Pine Barrens were a maze of fog and shadow, the air so thick with damp rot it felt like breathing tar. Daniel Hart stood at the cabin's threshold, his backpack slung over one shoulder, the other still oozing blood through his torn jacket. His hands shook as he gripped the car keys, the Chevy parked just 10 yards away but feeling like a continent. The forest was silent. No birds, no wind, just the weight of unseen eyes. The black feather, smeared with that too red blood, still stood upright in the mud like a grave marker. His laptop, stuffed with photos of claw marks and those burning red eyes, was zipped in his bag. He didn't care about the story anymore. He just wanted out. But the Barrens weren't done with him. He took a step, boots squelching, and the fog seemed to pulse, tightening like a noose. His phone buzzed again, no signal, yet another message, "You can't leave." His stomach dropped. He checked the phone into the mud, watching it sink, but the words burned in his head. The pines loomed closer, their branches twisting into claws. He ran for the car, heart hammering, keys slipping in his sweaty palm. The hiss came first, sharp and close, slicing through the silence. Then the flapping, leathery, heavy, like a storm breaking overhead. Daniel fumbled the key into the lock, the Chevy's door creaking as he yanked it open. Something moved in the fog, fast, a shadow too big to be anything natural. He dove inside, slamming the door and jamming the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered, coughed, then died. "No, no, no," he growled, twisting the key again. Nothing. The fog pressed against the windows, thick as oil, and the car shook, like something heavy had landed on the roof. Claws screeched across the metal, slow and deliberate, carving lines he could hear but not see. Daniel's breath hitched, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror. Red eyes stared back, glowing through the back window, unblinking. The Jersey Devil was here, and it wasn't hiding anymore. He grabbed the crowbar from the passenger seat, his knife was long gone, and kicked the door open, swinging wildly. "Get away," he screamed, voice raw. The fog swallowed his words, but the thing answered, a guttural chuckle that vibrated in his bones. The shadow lunged, wings snapping open, a blur of scales and teeth. Daniel swung the crowbar, connecting with something solid. The creature snarled, recoiling, but not before its claws raked his chest, tearing through fabric and skin. Blood soaked his shirt, warm and sticky. He stumbled back, tripping into the mud, the crowbar slipping from his grip. The fog swirled, and the devil loomed, taller than before, its goat-like head tilted, eyes burning like twin furnaces. It didn't attack, just watched, its maw curling into what looked like a grin. "You saw," it rasped, the words searing into his mind, not his ears. "You stay." Daniel scrambled to his feet, pain screaming through his chest, and ran blind into the forest. The pines closed in, branches snagging like hands. The flapping followed, relentless, the snarl now a roar that shook the ground. He didn't know where he was going, Blood Marsh, the cabin, nowhere. It didn't matter. The forest was alive, bending to the devil's will, guiding him deeper. He tripped into a clearing, the same one from yesterday, the twisted trees forming a cage. His camera lay in the mud, lens cracked, but the photos were still on his laptop, zipped in his bag. He clutched it like it could save him. The fog parted and the devil was there, wings spread wide, blocking the sky. Its claws gleamed, slick with his blood. "Mine," it hissed, stepping closer, its breath a rancid blast of decay. Daniel backed up, his back hitting a tree. He had nothing left. No weapon, no plan, just a journalist's stubborn need to know. "What are you?" he shouted, voice breaking. The creature paused, head tilting as if amused. Then it lunged. The fog swallowed everything. His scream, the flapping, the final snap of bone. The Pine Barrens went silent again. Days later, a local ranger found the Chevy, its roof clawed to ribbons, the driver's door hanging open. Daniel's backpack was nearby, torn open, his laptop gone. The camera was found a mile away, half buried in blood marsh, its last photo a blurry smear of red eyes and wings. His notebook lay in the mud, pages scattered, the words, "It's real," scrawled over and over in frantic ink. No body was found. No tracks, no blood, no sign of Daniel Hart. The locals whispered, as they always had, about the Jersey Devil claiming another soul. Esther Brooks, the historian, burned her old map, muttering prayers under her breath. Amos Reed, the hunter, carved a new amulet, his hands shaking worse than before. Daniel Hart vanished into the Pine Barrens, swallowed by the fog and the thing that ruled it. Whether he's dead or something worse, no one knows. The Barrens keep their secrets, and the devil keeps its due. If you love this chilling tale, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe and ring the bell, so you never miss our dark, spine-tingling horror stories from every corner of the globe.